Hello everybody. This is a really short session as has been planned, and we're already beginning 10 minutes late. I'm told that we can exceed the time by at least another 10 minutes, if that is all right with you. And therefore, for two reasons, I am not going to stand between this very illustrious panel and you, because all of you must be thinking, why is this person taking up time to tell us things that we don't want to know? But this is just to very, very warmly welcome our very, very distinguished panel who will be speaking on this movie, which Sreyashi Sen tells me is going to be playing in GBK. Yeah, apparently it was released yesterday. There was a preview yesterday, and the movie will be now available for every one of us to watch. To this audience, it need not be mentioned that Bhopal is a very important city in India, but more importantly, it's a cultural center in India. Bhopal, my friends tell me, is probably the folk culture capital of India. Do we have any Bhopalis here? We don't. Anyway, so I, when I'm lecturing in a class, I try to find out what is the level of literacy of my students. And when I find that it's below my level, I sort of feel overconfident about it. So I know that if I was talking about Calcutta, there is at least one person in the audience who knows more than me, and therefore I will be more guarded. So it is a very, very important historical, cultural city in which this tragedy, as we all know, happened. And this tragedy has had such long-lasting effects that it's difficult even today to get a nuclear power plant started in India funded by foreign investment. So that is the extent and impact of this disaster. I have friends who have worked on disaster management. So in some senses, this particular movie attracted such a cast of characters, all of whom you, I'm sure, have heard about, one of whom, Mr. Carl Penn, is with us. People like Martin Sheen, Tanishta Chatterjee and others, Mr. Rajpal Yadav, partly because of the nature of the theme. And Sreyashi tells me that she was interested in getting this panel here and to Singapore because she herself combines social work and movie making. She has a degree from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, which, as you know, is one of the leading centers for social work, not only in India but in Asia. Our colleagues in NUS respect the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. So she combines that passion, the film combines that passion, and we are indeed very, very fortunate to have somebody who's not only a great actor, as you would have read from Wikipedia, but also a kind of public personality who I'm told was very, very intimately involved with the workings of the White House, Mr. Carl Penn. Maybe a round of applause for Mr. Ravi Walia, whom I personally do not know, but I mean, as somebody who has produced this movie, I'm sure it was not made with the intention of just making money. A hand of applause for Mr. Ravi Walia. Mr. Nitin Raghuvanshi from Sahara Entertainment, who is also one of the people who was involved with financing this movie. Word of applause, a hand of applause for him. And last but not the least, most certainly, Mrs. Sreyashi Sen, for having orchestrated this particular situation where we have had a movie screening, we've had actors coming in to visit us, and trying to give this movie the kind of publicity that it really deserves. All of us know that the movie has been critically acclaimed, which means it has been acclaimed, but also critically acclaimed, and maybe some of those aspects will come out in this discussion. So without further ado then, I think I will request Mr. Carl Penn to open up.
Sure. Thank you. You guys can hear us, right? So nice intimate room. Thank you for coming. I think our trip here to Singapore is the third stop in a global release of a film that a lot of people said would never have been made and maybe shouldn't have been made. We released in the U.S. in November, in India in December, and now here in Singapore in January. I think Ravi can shed more light on the history of the project since he's been intimately involved more than I have. But the last 5 or 6 years since we've shot the film, a lot of questions have come up, obviously, about the real-world implications of what happened in Bhopal. But then, from the actor's perspective, very interesting to kind of go through the journey of people saying, there are so many documentaries made on the Bhopal tragedy, obviously articles and academic papers that have been written about it, but it's very difficult to make a film about a subject that has no conclusion yet. So while there's a conclusion to the disaster itself, there are still scores of people living through the consequences of what had happened 30 plus years ago. And it was an interesting thing to realize when we not just started making the film, but then started acquiring distribution, trying to promote the film. A lot of our early screenings in New York and in India, people were coming up saying, this movie is more like Hotel Rwanda, which is incredibly flattering. That's a very powerful film for those of you who haven't seen it. But the reason they said that was we know what happens at the end of this film, and we know what happens through the journey. But still, our writer-director, who couldn't be here today, did a tremendous job, I think, putting pieces together of a fictionalized adaptation of something that's deeply serious. And I think, Ravi, you can probably shed more light on the process.
Yes, I'd like to thank Professor Rahul Mukherjee for the introduction to all of us.
My serious apologies because you were not mentioned here. I forgot to introduce you. So without further ado,
no, that's it. I'm just saying.
Thank you very much for being in the band.
So thank you guys for coming here. It's a very important film and it's a story which has never been told. 30 years, it's the 30th year of the Bhopal tragedy happening, 3rd of December. It's a very important film. I felt when I got this film, Ravi Kumar, the director of the film, had come to me. And it was a very important film. I felt that the story has to be told to the entire world. And it's one of the biggest industrial disasters. And till today, the factory is still there. People are still suffering. And in fact, people that died were, they say that for them it's better because they died. People who are suffering is worse for them. So they continuously, a lot of people are still suffering. So I think it's an important film for us. As a producer, I felt it's my privilege to have been associated with this film. And we released it in India and we released it in the US. So we got very good response. And I think with Singapore and we're going to be opening a lot of other countries. So there's a lot of interest in the film in terms of a lot of people are getting aware of what really happened. So I think it's a story that needed to be told. And I think we had fabulous actors like Cal and Martin Sheen and Rajpal, Tanishta. So we had a great cast supporting us, and it's one of the few international films being made out of India. So I think even that way, it's very important film for India and for us as producers, for me and Sahara both. And I think she was kind enough to she was following up with me for quite some time to get to Singapore, and she wanted this film to come here and so that a lot of Singapore people could see it and also know what really happened, because this happened in Asia. This can happen anywhere else. It's not necessary that Bhopal cannot happen in today's environment. I think a lot of these things are happening in the US. Correct. But the magnitude of this sort, if it happens in today's day and age, that was 30 years back, I think it'll be worse than what. So I think it's a very important film. I think everybody should watch it. Even every individual should watch it so that they learn by it. I think that's also important. I think Nitin would say a few things from Sahara's side.
Hi everyone, thank you for having us here. And when we started this project, I guess we had two options: either to do a small scale movie and not make it a very commercial scale thing for us. But for Sahara, it was a cause that they were supporting. The entertainment vertical is very much active into doing commercial movies. but this is one of their first movies and the first big step towards their corporate social responsibility. We got in the best cast we could. Manishi, Kalpin, Misha Barton, Rajpal, Tanishta. The locations were chosen very precisely to look exactly what the real scenario was then. And we wanted to make it a very awareness-driven release for us. We wanted to coin it as an industrial safety day for the world, and not limited just to an Indian release. We wanted to go it across the world, and that's why we've been releasing it phase by phase. I guess ahead from this we have UAE, UK, and other plans in pipeline, and we hope the word spreads and the awareness spreads across all the people. Thank you.
As Dr. Mukherjee has said, thank you all for having us here, as well as Institute of South Asian Studies, for always supporting the urban efforts. I do wear two hats. I am a social worker first. I always say that, and I am a post-disaster specialist. So this film has a special place in my heart. And as Ravi said, yes, I followed up closely for 9 months, and I say this is my new baby. And yes, we've been successful to bring it to Singapore. A lot of people who I've been speaking to about the film from day one, what has really moved me is anyone who I've spoken to has always come forth and said, let me know how I can help you get the word across, because a lot of people didn't even know about this disaster. And this is more humongous maybe than Chernobyl, but a lot of people still don't know about it. Being a disaster management specialist also, what I feel in today's world is disaster as itself, when it happened, can be managed even years after. And that's something that this film proves. Even 30 years after, there's so much more that can be done about what happened there. You and me, or Darpan, the hat I wear, believes in bringing in meaningful cinema to Singapore and the region, and how media can be a social change maker. And that's something which the film has proven. We have, over the months that we've been publicizing the film here, we've got support and more support. The Singapore Film Society has come forward, the channels, the media have come forward, and more than just publicity, there's this whole feeling of what else can we do to get the message out about the film to the general public. And what we really need to do is, it is, I think, a shared responsibility when a film like this comes our way. And I thank all of you, the cast and crew, to see the sort of support even the cast and crew have come across for the cause. It's incredible. And I think it's, as I said, it's a shared responsibility, especially in a world where we're so much more connected because of social media. Research shows 60% people read their news on social media now. And if a disaster like this happened today, things may have been very different, but even talking to people who are in the sector, they say a disaster like this can happen again. So what is it that we can do to protect that? At the same time, what is it that we still owe to Bhopal, each and every one of us across the globe, to do that? So I'm hoping that this film, as it releases in Golden Village, we are hoping to have more screenings at Bombay Talkies, Jade too, some select screenings, because Shaw has come forward now to say they would like to have screenings after watching the film. So how is it that we can spread the word? Corporations are coming together because it's a lot about stakeholder management as well as disaster relief, CSR. So there are companies like StarHub, there are companies like PUB who have come together to say we would like to screen this film to our staff, to our clients, and make this available to see how we can spread the awareness on post-disaster relief as well as the shared responsibility. So it's been incredible, but there's lots more still to be done. And I think it rests on each one of us to spread the word about the film.
Thank you very much. We've had a quick and crisp sharing of views from the panel. I think without further ado, let's quickly get questions so that, I don't know how many of you have seen the film, but some of you may have read about it in Wikipedia and other places, and some of you may have even seen the screening yesterday. So we can start with a round of questions now. Yes, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Anubhav Ashok. I'm from the University of Texas at Austin, studying computer science. So I just wanted to ask producer and Mr. Kalpen, what kind of learnings do you think that one can sort of expect to get from this movie? And how did you guys plan to portray that?
Sure. Long way from Austin, by the way. That's a fun town. I think there were a couple of things. I mean, in terms of the portrayal, from the actor's perspective, and of course, we can offer a more broad perspective, but we, first and foremost, you're hoping to entertain an audience. You're hoping to captivate an audience, and personally, what I love about storytelling is the opportunity to make a captive audience feel a certain set of emotions that maybe didn't feel before, right? Particularly with a period piece, this taking place in the early 1980s. Trey kind of referenced this, but this is a time before everyone was interconnected, where you couldn't just read something on Twitter and realize that a disaster had happened 10 minutes ago. You actually had to wait for word to get out. So I think we wanted to connect an audience with a time and place that seems very distant, but is actually quite relevant, particularly for a younger audience who might not know that any of these things happen. So from the actor's perspective, your main concern, is that you're doing justice to the historical context, by which you just really trust your writer and director and do outside research to the best of your ability. And then when you're fictionalizing it, obviously wanting to make sure that all of those nuances are there, so the historical accuracies that you can bring to your character are there, A, so that you're not a distraction, but B, so that you can actually tell a compelling story as best as possible, and hoping that what people get out of it, whether it's a conversation starter, whether it's an understanding of a different time and place, whether it's people leaving theaters asking how we can prevent something like this from happening again. I feel like as an actor, that's not for me to decide, but it's one of the beauties of seeing people leave a screening, is hearing all of their conversations about things all around the world. Actually.
Yeah, it's a story that was 30 years back, 1984, and I mean, for us also, even if a lot of people don't know about it, and a lot of people who were very young were born at that point in time. So I think, like he said, we had to tell the story. So it's very important as a producer to see that it's said in an not an entertainment kind of a way, but again, what is real and characters, it's a drama. But we wanted to make sure that it's a film, not a documentary. But again, the reality, you cannot go away from the reality, so that had to be there. The film we wanted to make sure, because it's like when you make this film like Gandhi or Titanic, when you have films of that this is a real life story. So we wanted to make sure that the scale of the film is also made in that, for me as a filmmaker, wanted to make sure that the scale is done. We have done the post work in London. We've got a lot of international crew involved in this film. So we wanted to make sure that the film has that kind of scale. So then it travels more further. If it was just a documentary, then very few people would want to see it. We wanted to make sure that the film is made in that format, so that a lot of people could see it and watch it for years to come. So I think that was very important for us.
Hi, I have a question for Mr. Nitin. My name is Komal Visapu. You mentioned CSR. Were you able to get corporate sponsors for the movie? And also, did you approach Dow?
No, we didn't approach Dow for this, but we did get corporate sponsorships, yes. A lot of NGOs and companies like Amnesty, Bhopal Mobility, Ford Foundations, they came up, they sponsored a couple of events for us. We in fact went to Bhopal for a premiere of this movie. We had called all the victims for them to screen this movie. The Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh had come to watch at the premiere, and he made this movie tax-free there. So we got a support from the government also, not only from the corporate. So.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of support that we expected to get if you're asking us a question. I think a lot of people, to be honest, it was not like people have, from the screening yesterday in Singapore, in fact I found the people here more interested than, unfortunately, people in India. I think America also, we found that people are more interested, and unfortunately Indians are immune to, and they really don't care what happened 30 years back, if you ask me. That's my reaction, and I'll be very honest. When the film's released in India, people were concerned, they liked the film, but what happened after that? Nothing. I mean, that's about it. We released the film there, and there was no interest shown by any individual or a corporate of that kind. We've got Tatas, we have all of them, but none of them showed interest and said, okay, fine, let me see what I can do, or Reliance for that matter. None of them. So if they say they do talk about CSR, they only do CSR for, I think, their branding, I think, in India. I think it's very, you'll have Nita Ambani going to places and doing all of it. I don't know how they function. What is CSR for them, I really don't know. But I don't see them really on ground. For us, but the reason why we made this film, I felt like something, whatever, there's a hospital over there run by Bhopal Medical Association. I went there personally, me and Nitin had gone there. I saw the place, I felt, so much work those guys are putting there. They're growing there, they're making medicine there, they're treating people. They're not making money over there, but they're getting funded from UK. There's nobody from India funding it. It's really shocking, and actually it's really crazy. I mean, I've just come up, it's an interesting question, but nobody did. No corporates have come across and said, let me see what I can support. They've gone for the Swatch thing and whatever they're trying, where they get publicity. But that's about it. They'll tweet about it and they'll do that, whatever required. But in reality, they don't do anything. There's all, I think the CSR is a more of a, now it's like a kitty party kind of a situation in India. I'm being very honest, so I think that's what it is.
I love that you're being honest. This is as an actor, you're never really exposed to all the behind the scenes conversations about whether something goes into the benchmark of corporate responsibility or what. So really, it's only through distribution in these three markets, U.S., India, and Singapore. Now that I've had the chance to really hear these guys intimately discuss why this movie was so important to Sahara. And I think I'm not familiar with corporate responsibility in other companies. I don't know the companies that you mentioned, but I can tell just from having been a part of other films in the past that what Nitin and the Sahara guys are doing is pretty rare and pretty phenomenal.
Yeah,
I hope that other companies
what he
take
said is
that.
right, like one of the producers is Shimanta Roy, the owner of Sahara. What he has done for the film, that's what I was keep on telling Cal. When I went to him, when I started off the film and I went to him and I said, this is what I'm doing. They've been part of my other films also. But blindly, because they said that they support the cause, and he said, if I don't want to make money out of this film, even if I get my money back, I'm happy with it. But whatever money we make, let's decide where we should give this money to. And let's use the money for a hospital or whatever. So they feel that they've done, even contributed. I think that's hats off. People just talk about it, but none of them do it. In India, none of them. They just talk crap, shit, whatever they can call it. But they don't do anything. I think it's all about, you find all these big actors, Amir Khan, all of them doing it. But I don't know what they do in the end. What is corporate responsibility for them? I really don't see. I think only Salman Khan does it, being human. I'm being very straightforward and honest. Yeah, so that's what it is.
I think I'll just add on here that contrary to that, the sort of support we've received in Singapore for the film from corporations has been excellent.
Yeah.
And they've actually come forward to suggest of the areas in which they like to concentrate, specifically being workplace safety, environmental awareness, stakeholder management, as well as what really happened yesterday in the evening. I don't know if I shared it with you guys, is a few people came back to me after the screening and said we'd like to start a movement called Watch Bhopal, the movie. And we're going to get people together to have groups to go and watch this movie and then see what we can do about raising a fund. So I'm just very moved. Being from a CSR background, I agree with you, Ravi, with the lack of response at the India side and the plethora of views and commitment that we've got, and StarHub being one of the biggest supporters of environmental friendliness, was the first to approach us on their own and said, we've heard about this movie and it's coming here, we want to have a screening especially, and they're having a screening this evening, especially for their clients and select staff. So
yeah, actually she's right. I mean, we got the kind of response. I think we were in the Q&A when one of the guys said, I watched the film, what can I do for it? Now what do I do? I think that's an interesting, I mean, that's what I said. I mean, whatever you decide, I said I can't decide for you what you need to do. But I think even if you choose, there's a lot of NGOs, real NGOs who are really working on ground. Just decide as a person what you can do and just go ahead and do it. Even if you've done that bit with few people, I think the idea is that we go around the world and do it. I think there's a lot of support they would get. So I think I'm happy with that. It's not that we are getting that money by watching the film. There's an awareness of what really happened. And you are in an environment that this could happen all over again. I mean, so we are trying to just say that I hope this doesn't happen. And in today's day and age, the kind of magnitude of it would have happened in Bhopal today. You can imagine what kind of, it's almost like an atom bomb falling in that city. So I guess that's what.
Any other questions?
Did you have any register from Union Carbide for this one?
No. I wish I had, but no.
Ravi's been saying since day one that he
Yeah.
wishes they would have reacted because it would have drawn more attention to
Yeah,
the
we got-
film.
Yeah, we
Which
got.
they probably knew, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's like we got errors in omission, and I think Anderson just died September when he was in November. We didn't get excited that he died, but yeah. So yeah, I did for a moment. I got a lot of texts saying, "Oh, now your film will be all over." I said, "Yeah, yeah," but the awareness.
Terrible.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think Union Carbide didn't. We used Union Carbide logo in our posters also to call them, but they didn't come.
Rajesh, yes.
I'm a political science graduate student here, so but I have not yet seen the film, so I don't know how the question is going to be relevant for you. But I am struck by your title, Prayer for Rain. So I'd like to know who will answer the prayer, the government or the God?
Good question.
I've
Both.
never asked you about the title.
Yeah. Okay. Prayer for rain was I think that was winters that one in December. So and there was drought that was there. So I think that the idea of prayer for rain is that it was rain, the magnitude of the disaster was not being, or and I think. And now what's happening over there is whenever it rains, actually the factory is still there. So the chemicals seep into the ground. And people are still contaminated. So it's like that's more dangerous than what happened that one time.
There's also, now I'm remembering, there's also a scene in which it's explained that, I guess leading up to the disaster, because of the drought that was taking place in the region at the time, there was a downtick in the types of pesticide that farmers were purchasing because there were no crops. And so that impacted the ability of the plants to perform, which then in turn impacted things like government corruption, the parent company trying to, change the rules a little bit to modify according with weather patterns and things like that. So it's kind of a complex tie-in, but
Yeah,
I
because
forgot about that.
it's there in the film when you watch it, is that there was drought, and so all the pesticides were still there in the factory. So there was 40 ton of MIC there still in that. So that was it's there in the sequence. I'm telling you sequence. There's where Martin Sheen said, actually Misha Barton says that what's stored in US in a bottle was actually kept in the tank open. So they modernized, they actually Indianized, they say they Indianized the plant. So because that time there was a chalta attitude that was happening in India, so you could do anything. Still there. I'm just trying to be a little polite. Yeah, but yeah, so that's why, I guess. I hope it answered your question politically correct.
Actually, Springler, they say there are about 3,000 people were affected. Just now I saw somewhere 400. Altogether, how many people?
I think the numbers varies, but honestly, you're talking about affected still, or you're talking about people who died?
Who died? First,
I think the figure that's there, which is correct, is 16,000, which is there. 16. But I think the people who are affected are much more larger. I mean, it's almost 150 to 200,000 people still affected, and I think more because the babies are born still now also. I think it's fine. There's this. If you go there, you'll realize that the test done where they do regular tests of women who are breastfeeding, also we find that also has contaminated. That because the water is still contaminated. So the problem is not that 30 years what happened, it still continues to be there. which is surprising. The plant is still there. 30
But I
years
think
later.
you should definitely request Mr. Modi. He will definitely.
He's Mr. Modi. He's come. His surname is Modi. Yeah, I'll request it.
I just want to, I haven't seen the movie, I'm hoping to see it soon. But while reading about the movie, I found that Mr. Martin Sheen did not follow the script that was given to him. He kind of changed some of the text to make it a little bit more anti-Union Carbide. And then there were people who criticized the movie for
Yeah.
not bringing out.
That was initially
What
what
was
they,
that?
yeah, I think initially they thought that the film is being funded by Union Carbide. Because we didn't go, I didn't want to do any PR activity because I felt that anything I would do that point of time, there would be NGOs who would stand, protest against the film. There would be government agencies who would come into existence. There could be Union Carbide trying to do something. So I didn't want to say that we are that there are Indian producers involved. They thought there were American producers at that point of time, and it was funded by Union Carbide, surprisingly. But yes, Martin Sheen, when he read the script, the thing is that it's a grey character. He's playing Anderson, so he had. You have only that much information in the public domain about Anderson, and so there was a lot of research done, and very carefully, because it's portraying person who was living at that point of time, and what really factually happened. So we had to be very careful in making sure that when you're, I think Ravi Kumar did a lot of research, and I think whatever Martin Sheen played, but I think he changed it slightly, one or two sequences, I think with the boy that was there, I think one or two sequences he wanted. I don't think there was much of change or differences from it.
The other thing that some people have a problem with that, which I actually love about the film, and this is, I think is a testament to our director, is that none of the characters are one note. So if you take a character like Martin Sheen's character playing Warren, I think it would be very easy to follow the genre of a film like this and just totally demonize the CEO of the company that was responsible for this kind of tragedy. But our director loves to say, nobody goes to bed thinking, okay, how can I kill 16,000 people? It's way more complex than that. And I think if we dumb it down and just demonize one person, it's just bad storytelling, but B, it doesn't allow us to really understand the full complexity of issues and culpability on so many different hands that go into something like this. So I think some folks maybe had a problem with that because it's the atypical way of telling a story like this, and it's also much harder to realize the complexity. But from a storytelling perspective and audience perspective, a lot of people, myself included, responded to Ravi's writing for that reason. But then, of course, there's, the nice thing about art is there will be people who disagree.
Sure, certainly. Yes, please.
My question is directed to the actor. My name is Shilaka. I wanted to know that for your character, and I have not seen the film yet. How did you have to prepare for it? Did the actors have to go to a workshop or a research, or what went behind before they actually went to shoot it?
Sure, so what went into the preparation for the actors? I think each actor approached it a little bit differently. But in my case, we did a lot of outside research on what actually happened in Bhopal. My experience up until that point was fairly limited. So I remember, I was a little kid when the actual disaster happened. I remember vaguely things happening in the news and parents talking about it. After that, I studied it a little bit in college in one of my development studies, poli-sci classes, it came up. But since then, obviously, no in-depth research. So starting with in-depth research, like I said, there are plenty of articles, academic and otherwise, on the disaster. But then really relying heavily on the writers. We have two writers, Ravi Kumar and David Brooks, and then Ravi also directed the film. He grew up a few hundred miles from Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh, and so had some first-hand memories. He was also a little bit older than me, so first-hand memories. He was still relatively young when it happened, but relying a lot on that. But then the other part of it, since we are a fictionalized adaptation ultimately, is figuring out your character and the things that are not real. So I play a guy named Motwani, who's a journalist, loosely based on a real journalist named Keswani, who still lives in Bhopal. But when I say loosely based, that means that it's not a biopic. So I couldn't just go and follow this guy around for 2 weeks and then figure out what I could learn. In fact, talking to both Ravis, Walia, and our director, they said, please don't go to Bhopal because people assume so many different things about this movie. Some people think it's a Union Carbide movie, other people think it's some leftist propaganda film. Neither are true, obviously, and so why don't we just do research from here? Plus, the character it's not a biopic. So all right. The biggest challenge, though, was probably, I was doing most of my rehearsing in the States, where I live. We landed in Hyderabad, where we shot the majority of the film, and I go to my first rehearsal, which is 3 days before we're shooting the film. And we do the first run through of the first scene, and the director looks at me kind of quizzically at the end, and he goes, "Acha, abhi Hindi mein." I said, "I don't speak Hindi." "What do you mean abhi Hindi mein? You want me to do the lines in Hindi? Like, I speak English, and I speak Gujarati, but with a terrible New Jersey accent. So I don't think you want me to do this." And they said, we had a very long conversation about the authenticity of what it's like to be a gossip columnist in Bhopal in 1983. And got some dialect coaches and began a very quick and aggressive campaign to not just learn the Hindi, but learn it with the right type of accent and dialect. And so the cast, Rajpal Yadav and the whole Indian crew were really fantastic in helping. So I think when you ask actors, there's the very serious answer about what went into the historical context, and then there are these little tidbits of ridiculousness that you just never thought you would get into, particularly for a film this tragic. There were certainly elements of humor in the preparation.
Yeah, the most amazing shirts.
Oh yeah, the attire is very, the guy, this guy who it's based on is Sindhi in Bhopal in 1983 who loves himself a lot, so he's very fun.
Yes, please.
I'm an acting student from New York University, and I'd just like to ask Mr. Kalpan, as an American actor with South Asian heritage, did you feel any personal responsibilities with the content of the film?
No. I'm not a big believer in cultural ambassadorship. I think it's kind of dangerous because then it crosses the line, in my opinion, from portraying characters into activism. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I find it to be kind of boring if those are the only choices that I'm making. I'm sure part of that's informed by the journey of any actor. Is you start out playing roles that are you're kind of pigeonholed into, and then you want to expand beyond that. But one of the joys that I love about storytelling is oftentimes playing characters that I completely disagree with, and that I find it kind of repulsive to play. I remember I played a terrorist on a couple of episodes of 24 and loved it. It was one of my favorite experiences. It was such an acting challenge. I hate guns, and here I was holding a family hostage, shooting guns. Like, what am I doing? I couldn't sleep at night when I would go home because it's hard to kind of shake 16 hours of holding a gun to somebody's head. So that's a really long-winded way of saying I like to not think about it in that context. And I kind of prefer to think, particularly for a story about this, that's really not based on nationality or ethnicity. It's based on issues that have to do with an industrial accident. I kind of wanted that to be the focus, and then painfully had to learn Hindi to make that the focus, so that I did not have a terrible New Jersey accent.
Yes, please.
My question is, this movie was wrapped in 2010, I guess. Yeah, this was slated to be released by 2010. So, why do you think was this delayed? Was there any restriction from
The shooting was, there were two aspects. One is that you start is that, like you said, it took time for us to make it. So there was the writing process of the film. Then there's the shooting process. And there's a lot of post that we had to do for the film. So by the time we finished it was around end 2012. Because we did the whole post in London and in India. But mostly it was done the sound, the mix of the film, as well as the whole DI. There's a lot of special effects in the film because of the factory sequences and all that. We had to do all that bit in London, so it took us a lot of time. In India, we don't spend too much of time on post because if you just release the film in 2-3 months, the sound quality.
Yeah, there are many movies that we have done, but this is some.
Yeah, so we had to take a lot of time. We had to make sure that the post and the film is there. Then we had a lot of festivals that we had to go to before we could actually release the film. And then finding a distribution for this kind of film is also not that easy. It's not Batman or Superman or all those big films. Yes, so that's the time that we took. That's how we wanted. And it came in a release when we were releasing this year, last year. So we made sure that it was released around point of time when the tragedy really happened. So that's how we released in India on 5th of December. And in US we released 7th of November. And we're having a lot of digital release in US now happening. It's already started. And then we release in the Europe, in UK, Germany, Italy. So this film will be running for the next 6-8 months all over the world. So I think the independent film circuits, normally, I think Cal will also be able to give a better idea, but that's how it releases. You don't come in one all over the world, you don't release at the same time.
Yeah, independent films also generally take a lot longer because of limited resources. So if you have 100 people working on a moderate budget film, for a film like this, you might only have 10 or 15. So things obviously take a lot longer. There's also, I don't know the financial structure, but a lot of times with independent cinema, you make the money, then you have to raise separate money to shoot the film after you've acquired the script, then you have to raise separate money to edit and do post-production. So a lot of these things happen in stages. The companies come in to give you finishing funds, but not distribution splits and things like that. So I assume that all played into.
Actually, my actual question was that I didn't see much PR being done regarding this movie. Though I saw this trailer long back, but then that was the only trailer that I could see, and nothing else about no information about that movie.
Recently?
No, not recently. But just before the release of this movie, I could find. But from the first trailer release to this, there's been no discussion on this. So maybe that
because we don't have a distribution. If you don't lock a distribution and you lock a PR before, then the distributors feel that it becomes ours. As producers, it becomes ours. We don't want to spoil. You start the publicity of the film. You can't start, stop. So we just had the trailer launch, which was meant for Cannes. And we were in Cannes, we were in Tokyo, we were in a lot of film festivals. So that point of time, we did launch through our sales agency that is there in UK.
Okay.
So we did our launch of the first trailer. That was the earlier trailer we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then post that, we came in with the new trailer, which was for the release.
last year.
Yeah. So that was because we were releasing the film, so we had to do the second trailer. So that's why there was a gap between that and now.
But you're also right. This is not a film that's ever going to make $50 million, right? So that you're never going to see publicity on the scale of some of the big budget movies that Ravi had mentioned. We're much more of a targeted. Yeah, really. We're much more of a targeted film. So, and frankly, I mean, I'll just say this openly. I don't think it's any big secret. A lot of our audience is going to be word of mouth.
Yeah.
So things, when people say, oh, we'll tweet about it or share it with your friends on Facebook or take 5 or 10 of your friends to see it this weekend. That's all actually true. That contributed a lot to the numbers of people that saw it in the US and in India.
I think I can completely agree, and that's what I faced when I first got this film and I approached some of the biggest names here in theatrical distribution. It was a no at point one. And it's only when some of them saw the screener and they sort of were moved and said, okay, fine, we'll have it. And now it's a lot with indie films. I'm an indie film distributor mainly. So it's very difficult to get distribution for independent films when you are marketing with a Hobbit and with a Hungry Games. So, it's Hunger Games. It's like, it's crazy. You are absolutely on the back burner for the theaters. But what's happened what happens with films with impact is once the audience sees it, the audience itself pushes the theater to have more shows.
Yeah.
And films like this, another thing that works is group bookings, where people come together as corporations, look at the meaning of the film, and see how they can get it to a wider range of audience. And that's what's happened to Bhopal. Similarly, Straits Times having a big article makes a difference. Channel News Asia doing a show makes a difference. So it's all post rather than pre.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of support that you need when you set up, because today to release a film or marketing expenses is a lot. Like in India, we spend almost $1 million to release the film. But in US, we did strategically, we spend less because they felt that digitally more than theatrically, there's a better market for us in DVD, home video, and VOD, and so that market is much bigger, but which is good. That also runs in millions, but if you have a theatrical release, which Cal feels that we could have got a better release, but I think it depends on the kind of distributor wants to do or what he can do in that country and how you. So it's a learning process. But I think more or less we're happy with it, and I think the film shelf life is much longer than just coming, releasing, and going. So I think it's a much larger shelf life for this. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Sorry. Hi, I'm Michael. My question is, what was left on the cutting room floor in terms of like sequences or from the original script to what was actually translated to the final film? Or was it very lean in terms of it was very much like the script?
I didn't cut much of Carpenter's one, but
Uh-huh.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think when the script was the shooting script, and when we come to the editing, we had lots of cuts. I think we were editing for almost a year before we could really finalize it, because we had to involve the distributors or sales guys, because that's in end of the day it has to go to the market where it has to get sold or people need to watch it. And I think because it was my first international film, and I think Ravi Kumar's first feature film, but he's done short films before. We went through a process of editing, but specifically like an American, I think Cal will say, American audience is different from a European audience. So I think we were getting mixed between in both. There were two cuts especially. And there was a sequence, I think, which is not there in the film, which we had earlier, where there's a Martin Sheen and Misha Barton sequence, which was there, which I really liked, and Ravi Kumar did like it. The distributors felt that it's not required because there's information already given in the film through voiceover, so we couldn't replicate. So there were quite a few sequences, good ones, which were also removed out of the film, which will be a part of the DVD. And you'll be able to see it.
It wasn't just two though. It was many. No. I mean, not just two different countries, but the difference between cinema in Asia, particularly in South Asia, tends to be a lot longer. I mean, some of these movies are 3.5 hours long, and so our movie being 90 minutes. I think you're talking about preferences from distribution teams in India versus those in the U.S. or the UK. US and UK also being different. I remember there was an iteration towards the end after a lot of the cuts had also been made, when you guys added that voiceover of the perspective. So, and partially also, I think when we shot the movie in 2009, the difference between 2009 and 2014 in terms of the Indian audiences themselves. I mean, after things like The Lunchbox and movies that are, not song and dance movies, really independent cinema, whether they're in Hindi or in English, the audience in India and in other parts of Asia has expanded for a product like that. That didn't exist when we actually made the film. So it's actually been really fascinating from an actor's perspective to see how they taper and then add things like voiceover to cater to what's now a new market that maybe didn't exist before.
Any other questions?
Do your closing credits lead people to ask certain questions about accountability, about supporting a cause, or targeting money towards Bhopal?
Actually, our end credit says that Union Carbide never apologized, and we have information where, for example, Anderson was played by Martin Sheen. So if you see the film, you have information given of we comparing Bhopal, the kind of money they got for the tragedy, and if a BP oil leak happened, so they were paid billions of dollars. We have information related to that, and we have Bhopal Medical Association, the logo as they say. We want to support them through the film when we get monies out, and we would give them and try to see wherever we could help them out. Or through this, if people see it and they get in touch with them and they help them also. And we had Amnesty International there. But yes, we have information related to the reality of what happened. So the numbers are there and the facts. And so I think that information is there. But not, yes, not directing. We're not, you couldn't do that. At the end of the day, again, and then there's a set of people who watch the film, then we all go and see the film after the ratings. They will say this is preachy and you're trying to say it. So we wanted to get away from that. So we mentioned the reality, what's happened, and how it's compared to the other tragedies that have happened around the world. So Bhopal, we got some 470, these numbers are not correct, mind you, $470 million paid, whereas for the BP oil it was around $5 billion. And so that comparison has been given in front.
I think you guys did well, though. I mean, one of the implications there is that the Indian government didn't fight hard enough for a settlement and then embezzled the settlement after they got it, right?
Yeah.
You don't spell that out, but it's implicit in explaining the
Yeah.
differences between different settlements. You pull up Bhopal Medical Appeal or Amnesty International at the end, not to direct people to it, but to give an option if they, I thought you guys did that really well.
And I think in the end, we had to be very careful. It's a film in the end of it. But yes, like you rightly said, we had to be, the information is correct, so we have to give that information. And I think when people do, I've seen that in our screenings, people actually sit and watch that and they really get angry more posts, because once they've seen it, they see this information and they say, why didn't they even apologize? I mean, like Anderson, the only thing was that he didn't, there's an interesting thing which we have in the making where Martin Sheen asked a question. He says that, we've heard everybody's side of the story. So he tells Anderson, actually, if he was alive and seeing it, that we want to hear your side of the story, because nobody's heard him speak out and say what really happened. Why did he really do it, or what was the reason that happened? So his side of the story, nobody knows.
And also, from experience and from families I know in Bhopal, even when they talk about the amounts in settlement, the amounts could be a certain number, but it's not that the right people got the amounts. You would hear, say, I had friends who had domestic helps would say, "Aaj gas ka paisa milega, we'll get the gas money today." But they were not even affected, but they were going there to get their gas money with their ration card. So it's not even that the money went to the people that were really needing that money and were the ones who were affected. So when you talk of settlement numbers, it's not even the real numbers of the people who got it.
The issue is there's lack of accountability still today. Dow Chemical, whatever, assets and liabilities of Union Carbide, that premises still exists, it's still tainted, it still has chemicals that people are drinking through. Nobody, Dow operates in India, it does lots of CSR work around water and other issues, yet it hasn't held itself responsible despite having taken over the real estate.
I might be wrong, but my understanding of it was that they did not buy the liabilities, so it was a really interesting deal.
But they own the real estate.
No, the Indian government owns it, right? The plant itself.
I wouldn't.
Anyway, my point is, my eyes were really opened up to the nature of the
It's
deal.
like the Dow Chemical bought in Union Carbide.
Yeah.
So they bought in the asset. Yeah, I mean, if you buy a company, you buy all the pluses and assets and liabilities. I think that's true, but in terms of the nature of the plant still exists because the land was given by the government, I guess, because so nothing has happened. It's still there. So accountability, I'm telling you, CSR is a joke in India. There are real people like Wipro, I think, Azim Premji, and there are real people who do it. I'm not saying they don't. But a lot of people show CSR because they have to. CSR, they get tax rebates because of CSR. I think one of the reasons they do CSR in India is because of getting that whatever tax rebate. So you get deducted from tax. So I think one of the reasons people do CSR is only because of that. Real CSR, I don't know. There are people who do it, but there are only few. You can count them. I think Azim Premji, I think is a serious guy, Wipro guy. I think even Reliance does it seriously, that they're doing it.
Well, I guess, but the whole concept of CSR, the art is of question, whether responsibility or responsiveness, whatever you call it. Companies need to move out from that whole philanthropy aspect to look at what really CSR is. It's still about taking a little bit of their profit budget and putting it into some sort of philanthropy project, and they feel they've done their bit in CSR, but does it really come full circle? What are you doing as a corporate that's responsible? Where, yes, your business as a business is business. That's something we always talk about in CSR.
Yeah, for example, when we were releasing this film, we thought that a lot of people would come forward. Like the question was that a lot of people would come forward and say that because we were spending almost $1 million in marketing. And this film requires an awareness wherever internationally, and there's a lot of money that needs to be spent for that. So we thought that a lot of money would actually come from a lot of corporates wanting to contribute through their marketing, tool. Like for example, like if there's a mobile company, so we had an idea by saying that just send in an SMS and or missed call. You would get one would be in India that would actually go to the victims. They do it for competitions for American Idol and all that. They do all that for Big Boss, but they will not do a missed call thing for Bhopal thing, where that whatever that money is $1, it's hardly anything in India. I mean, there's so many people who've got mobiles, so that money would have gone to the victims. We had so many ideas, but none of them came forward. In fact, they got scared because they were a little scared that what would the government think, and there's a new government that's come into BJP, so they'll think that even none of them, I mean, I don't think if they're doing cleaning, if they can even start cleaning the factory bit, I think it's a big thing for them to start. They're cleaning the roads, their backyards, which is already cleaned. I don't know what are they cleaning. They're throwing it and they're cleaning it back.
No,
So
it's
I guess.
interesting. I asked some of my friends who are banker friends in India to see if they could organize screenings in India.
Yeah.
And I won't name the bank, but one of them got back to me saying, "Oh, I don't know whether one of my HLW clients is a Union Carbide employee, so I don't think I can go there." But it's just about putting in that effort. Excuses exist, and it's about being innovative in your CSR and how you can think of building that brand into that product. There's no wrong in
The
making
biggest
money.
CSR is done by Sahara Group, is investing the money. And honestly speaking, I mean, hats off to them. I mean, whatever is said and done, they put in the money where it's required and they contributed to the film and the cost. And because of which now the film is being viewed from everyone. I think hats off to them for doing this. I don't think anybody, there were companies like Snapdeal.com, they came in, one or two companies, but not really, I mean, not to the, this could have actually helped. I'm saying forget the film, they could have at least realized, oh, such a thing happened 30 years back. Let me just contribute to the people of Bhopal. Nothing, I don't think those guys got the kind of response they felt that this film would have generated. I don't think it will happen in India, for sure. In fact, internationally it will be much bigger. And I think they would get support from international people, or they will find a lot of support that they would get from there. But India, I doubt. They're more scared. I don't know for whatever reasons. Since currently with the new government, they're more scared. I don't know why.
But your point about legal aspect, I think that is quite correct. Because if you recall for the nuclear deal, there was a lot of focus on liability issues, which was missing in this particular deal.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of things could not be done. I did have something to share
Yes,
with you.
sure. And just as I said, every day we have different forms of support for this film. When I walked into this room, Jordan told me that there's a gentleman who has made a PowerPoint presentation especially for us on Bhopal. And Mr. Ashok, thank you so much. We would be more than delighted for you.
My pleasure. Prof, yeah, please. Prof. Mukherjee, I wanted you to feel confident, and therefore I did not own up and say I was in Bhopal for a few years. I know a little bit of Bhopal, but not a Bhopali.
So you found an audience.
You
One number.
Thanks. Yeah, please. Just to let the audience know, I was in Bhopal the beautiful years of my teenage. All right, and that and let me share this with you. So, a prayer for rain, and as you all mentioned, it still continues. One form or the other, right? I kind of landed there as a teen, 1977. Started my undergrad there. This was almost my home for the first 6 months. Almost lived in the railway platform, the food there, the waiting room, all right, where I would bathe and then go off to college and so on and so forth. For the first 6 months, because my father was in railways, and it took 6 months before he could, get transferred to the railway colony there. And I had beautiful, excellent years of my life. Palatial house, those British house, leftovers of British. Golden years of my life. Just to give you a perspective, this is where the railway colony is. My college was just about a kilometer and a half. Oops. And that's where the site was, the Union College site. I passed out in 82. I left the place December 82. This happened exactly 2 years ago. I have a lot of my friends. My acquaintances. Who actually passed away. Who I spent 6 7 years. Much later, I read this book. Then I decided I must go back. I did. Visited that place. It's just beautiful how, despite all this, there are people who are living in hope. Lots of resentment. This was a beautiful memorial there. Right? And beautiful words there, very inspiring. How many years with you? All right? And you spoke at length about whatever little money that was intended just did not reach the people. A lot of them committed suicide. Right? It was extremely emotional for me. Yet, as some of you were saying, life goes on. This guy is next to that compound wall. And what is hurting is, he is drinking those contaminated water. Right. I went back, the same office still exists, and I tracked down. In leftovers of the British, you have orderlies at home. I tracked down one of them. I knew most of them had kind of entire family perished. Because as the crow flies, the distance between the railway colony, which is very dense, we few people, about 300 people, we know each other very well. As the crow flies, it was about a kilometer and a half. And railway colony was the most immediately affected. A lot of people, my father, when he had actually got a couple of his people transferred from other places to be part of his team. Entire family gone. I managed to track down one of such persons who used to be at the house, used to stitch my clothes, because he had tailoring abilities. Right. I managed to track down the widow lady, and hats off to her. In those 25 years, she single-handedly brought up the 3 daughters. And they're doing quite well. That's all I have to say. And moving forward, lots of lessons to be learned. I teach in just across the corner part of NUS. I teach leadership courses, especially aimed at civil servants and government officers. And this shall become a part of my curriculum. Lots of lessons to learn.
It's actually very, very fitting that, you know, this panel could end with really what it is about. It is about the human condition. It is not, I think Ravi opened up by saying that this was not about making money. This was about something deeper than that. And it couldn't have ended more intimately and more profoundly without this presentation, because at the end of the day, you have felt it through your very, very close friends. And what happens in life is that when somebody in your own family dies, you feel it. But somebody who is very distant passes away, you do not feel it. And I think that is the difference between being more humane and less humane. So if one of the agendas of this movie was to bring humanity back into people who somewhat tend to forget that some amount of humanity should still be left behind, I think, although it's a small audience, it was organized, you know, at short notice, I think all the members of this panel, as well as Dr. Ashok Kumar, I think have brought home that point. And I think that spirit will continue from, I'm sure it has already been sparked through the many screenings that have happened, and it will persist. What also appears to me to have come out of this conversation is the fact that I don't know about the United States of America, where the philanthropic tradition is considered to be quite profound. I mean, there are these Ivy League schools that are run by India too. One knows of the history of the Tatas. Jamshedji Tata gave up 1/3 of his property to set up the Indian Institute of Science. We know that the Tata Institute of Social Science is a very kind of venerable institution. But what emerges out of this conversation is that corporate social responsibility or just civic action alone is not the solution to the problem. I think the state has to intervene and it has to regulate. And even if you have an attentive civil society, it cannot be a very important independent variable that can change the structure of the circumstance substantially. There will be people who will know how to bear it. There will be like one of those brave people we saw in the slides. There will be, and of course they can support the effort. But when you're dealing with, and I must state, it's just a coincidence, you know, I walk from my house to this place and often I'm listening to BBC. A couple of days ago, a whole section of a BBC news was about Bhopal. And why Bhopal is such a big disaster. Because in relation to the magnitude of the catastrophe, the response has been very, very dismal. So I think with that spirit, let us, you know, thank our speakers and Dr. Ashok Kumar for having enlightened us about this subject. But before we do that, I think let me have the privilege of, on behalf of the Institute, to present a copy of the book that is for all of us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you once again for being.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.